Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Every sport has had its giants. In football or soccer, if you will, we've had Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. And in tennis, we've had Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. In basketball, we've had Michael Jordan and LeBron James. And in chess, undeniably the GOAT is Magnus Carlsen. But the thing about all these giants is that they've had their phase in which they come up to the top, then at some point they dominate, and at some point, inevitably, they fall off. Now, Magnus undeniably has been dominating the chess world for the last 10 years, if not longer. But lately, he has not been as dominant anymore. He's not been winning as many super tournaments, especially in classical. And today, he started off his campaign in the Norway chess. He started off against his rival, Fabiano Caruana. They contested a very close match in the 2018 World Chess Championship that Magnus only managed to win in the rapid portion. So let's have a look at this game. So Fabiano started the game off with the move 1 e4, and Magnus plays the French defense. He plays the move e6. Now the thing about Magnus, I think if he wants against these top players, I think if he wants to make a draw, he probably can still make it with the move e5. But with the move e6, he's showing his combative intentions. So Fabiano goes d4, d5, this is the start of the French defense, and Fabiano plays the move knight to c3, by far the most critical continuation against the French. Now black here has two options. You can play the Wiener defense or the move knight to f6. If I'm not mistaken, this is called the Steinitz defense. So here white plays e5, grabbing more space in the center, the knight jumps back, and here the move f4. You want to bolster that pawn on e5 because black is going to go c5, weaken that pawn on d4, so you want to give the pawn on e5 a little bit more support. So Magnus goes c5, knight f3, strengthening the center, knight to c6, bishop b3. All pretty centered so far. Here there's a lot of continuations for black. Black can go for a very quick queen to b6 or most like bishop b7, but Magnus goes for the move a6. He wants to expand on the queen side with the move b5. Now here Fabiano plays an interesting move. He plays the move knight to e2, adding even more support to that pawn on d4, and he can bolster it with the move c3. Now Magnus goes for the move queen to b6, attacking that pawn on b2, but Fabiano just calmly defends it with the move queen to c1. Also, the queen on c1 will always defend the bishop on e3, so black never has any tactics where this bishop is hanging. Now Magnus goes bishop b7, c3, strengthening the center, castles, and here a very instructive move, Fabiano plays the move g3. Because currently his bishop is blocked, but now he can bring the bishop into the game with bishop h3 or bishop to g2. So Magnus goes for the move f6, bishop g2, he takes on d4, c takes, and this is what I was talking about earlier. Without the queen of c1, black often has tactics like pawn takes c5 and taking over here, but here the bishop on e3 is protected, so this does not work. Alright, so Magnus plays the move queen a5 check. Fabiano just blocks with the knight, and here we see the problem of the French defense. White has a lot of space in the center, and black has less space. And especially this bishop on c8 is very often cramped because you commit your pawns to the light squares, and since this bishop is the light square bishop, it is often stuck behind the wall of pawns. Now Magnus plays the move knight to b6. He wants to go for knight c4, attacking this bishop over here, but also clearing up the d7 square for his bishop. But now Fabiano takes on f6. He was waiting to make this move because with the knight on f6, with the knight on d7, black could recapture with the knight. But now Magnus recaptures with the bishop, and now the move b3, stopping the knight from jumping into c4. Fabiano wanted to take here first because if you play b3, well then there's moves like bishop a3 or bishop b4, which could be pretty annoying. So he took an f6, played the move b3, and now Magnus goes bishop d7, clearing up the c8 square for his rook. But after castles, rook c8, queen e2, I feel like white has a slight advantage. The black pieces are kind of stepping on each other's toes. The pawn on e6 is a little bit weak, and it feels like white has pretty good control here. So Magnus goes for bishop b7, a good move. He wants to go bishop b4, put some pressure on the knight on c3. So Fabiano goes for the move knight to e2, offering a trade of queens. So Magnus trades the queens, Fabiano recaptures, and still in the endgame, Fabiano is a little bit better. The knights don't have any good jumps, white can go for bishop h3, putting some pressure over here, and if this knight ever moves, then there's knight e5 for white. Alright, so Magnus goes rook to c7, rook ac1, and rook fc8, doubling up the rooks. But now Fabiano comes up with a very strong move. He plays the move f5, with the very nice idea that in case black takes, there is bishop f4, trapping that rook on c7, which is kind of the drawback of the move rook to c8. And, well, if you don't take, white's going to put a lot of pressure on that pawn on e6. If the pawn on e6 crumbles, then the pawn on d5 is going to get a little bit weak. So Magnus played the move bishop a3, and now Fabiano shifts his entire attention to the king side with the move rook to c1, or rook c to e1, putting even more pressure on the e-file. Bishop b4, he takes, Magnus recaptures, Fabiano takes an e6, and now goes knight to f4, attacking that bishop on e6. So Magnus goes bishop to f5, but now comes knight e5, opening up the diagonal for the bishop on g2, putting a lot of pressure over here. Now Magnus here plays a very good move. He plays the move g6. He does not go pawn grabbing with something like knight takes a2, because after knight takes d5, the entire position is collapsing. I mean, the bishop is coming in, the bishop on f5 is hanging, so this is something black cannot do. So g6, very good move, creating some squares for the king and also defending that bishop on f5. Now Fabiano goes g4, attacking the bishop. The bishop doesn't have any good squares, so Magnus has to go to e4. And around here, it feels like Magnus should have pretty good chances to hold. He's got 31 minutes against 13 minutes from Fabiano. And after this, he is down a pawn, but it's really not that bad. a3, knight for d5, and Fabiano grabs the pawn on e4. Now, I think had Magnus traded knights here on f4 and played something like knight at d5, his chances to hold are pretty good. Like, white's up a pawn, but it's not very easy to make use of that. And in the meantime, black can create some counterplay on the queen side. But what's very uncharacteristic for Magnus was that his defense was below par. It wasn't up to his normal standard. He played the move rook to c3. He went pawn grabbing right away. But here Fabiano unleashed a very strong move. He played the move knight to d7. With the idea that if, in case you take this knight, now we take this knight over here. Your rook is under attack, and white is also threatening a fork on e7, which would collect the rook. So, Magnus here, he's in trouble. And often what you see in chess is that one mistake does not come alone. If you make one mistake, then you get a little bit frustrated. We know all of this. But it even happens to the best players in the world, and perhaps that's what happened to Magnus as well. Or he miscalculated. With the move rook c3, he was aiming to grab this pawn, and that's what he did. But this is another inaccuracy. Now Fabiano trades the knights and plays the move rook to e5. He's attacking the knight, but as soon as this knight moves, white is going to come in swinging with the move knight to f6 check. And Magnus resigned, which felt a little bit early. It feels like Fabiano is definitely in the driver's seat, but is it lost? I mean, I don't know. I mean, he could have still moved the king. Like, you cannot move the king here because of rook e7. This will lead to forced checkmate. But you can move your king, let's say, to g7. And again, white should be better after something like check. King h6 leads to a forced checkmate. But, you know, there's still king f8. And, you know, you're worse, but you got to keep the fight going. So a little bit surprising that Magnus just threw in the towel. So another loss for Magnus. He's still by far and large the #1 in the world. But his dominance is, he's not as dominant anymore. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is Magnus Carlsen, as many people like to say, is he washed? Is he over the hill? Let me know what all you guys think, and I will see you guys tomorrow for the recap of round number 2 of Norway chess.